After financing my husband's PhD program, I found him secretly applying for jobs in other cities without me. When I confronted him, he said, "You were just the funding phase." I stayed silent, filed for divorce without warning, and made sure his graduation day photos were accompanied by news of the lawsuits he'd never escape. I never thought I'd be the kind of woman to get blindsided like this. Jason and I met when we were both working at a dusty little medical billing office in Boise, Idaho. It was the kind of place where time crawled and dreams went to die. I was 25. So was he. We started off as friends, taking lunch breaks together, sending memes back and forth, laughing over stale coffee. Then one night we kissed in the parking lot, and that was it. We got married 2 years later. No big wedding. Just a courthouse, our closest friends, and a cheap dinner afterward at an Italian place near the freeway. I didn't care about the small stuff. I thought love was enough. A year into the marriage, Jason told me he wanted to go back to school. He said he always felt pulled toward clinical psychology and helping people. Said the system needed people like him. I believed him. I supported him. He got into a solid PhD program at the University of Michigan, and I agreed to move with him. I found a good job out there, senior analyst at a healthcare company. The salary was decent. It was enough to cover everything for both of us while he studied full-time. We made a deal. I'd support him through the program, and once he got his degree, he'd work and give us both some breathing room. We'd buy a house. Maybe start a family. I wasn't in a rush. I just wanted a future we both built. For 5 years, I covered it all: rent, groceries, the car note, health insurance, gas, phone bills, Wi-Fi, even most of his textbooks. I didn't complain. Not once. We weren't rich, but I made it work. I figured love was sacrifice. He had some research gigs and stipends, but it wasn't much. Maybe $10,000 a year at best. He'd thank me every now and then. Text me things like, "I know I don't say this enough, but I appreciate what you're doing for us." I saved those messages. But here's the part that hurts: I didn't see it coming. Not even a little. 3 months before he was set to graduate, I came home early from work. A transformer blew near my office, so they let us out at 2. I walked in quietly, and I heard him talking from the bedroom. His door was cracked open, and I heard his voice say, "Yeah, no attachments here. I'm free to relocate. No kids, no partner complications." I froze. He was on a Zoom call. Some kind of interview. I stood in the hallway listening to my husband pretend like I didn't even exist. He talked about job offers: Denver, Austin, San Diego. He said he was ready to start fresh. Fresh from what? That night at dinner, I asked him how his day was. He said it was fine. That he spent most of it working on his dissertation edits. He looked me in the eye and lied. I nodded and smiled. My hands didn't even shake. After dinner, he went for a run. I opened his laptop. I knew his password. He never changed it. I wasn't prepared for what I found. He had cover letters addressed to clinics and research hospitals all over the country. None of them mentioned me. His resume made it sound like he did it all alone. But what got me the most was a document titled "Exit Strategy." Inside, he had notes about separating assets, fake narratives about emotional incompatibility, and even a blurb about how I stifled his potential. He was planning to leave me the second he had that diploma in hand. The next day, I confronted him. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just asked, "Are you planning to move away after graduation?" He didn't deny it. He didn't even try to soften it. He just shrugged and said, "Look, you were just the funding phase. I had to get through the program." We both knew this wasn't forever. That was the moment something broke in me. Not sadness. Not confusion. Just a cold clarity. He saw me as an ATM. A stepping stone. A temporary support beam he could kick away once the roof was finished. I said nothing. I didn't argue. I didn't beg. Instead, I got to work. After that night, I became a stranger in my own home. But Jason didn't even notice. He thought I was being mature about it, probably. I still cooked. Still cleaned. Still paid the bills. But every day, I was filing things away in my head. I documented everything: bank transfers, Venmo receipts, old texts where he promised we'd build our future together. I even started recording some of our conversations on my phone when he got careless and talked about his plans. I wasn't emotional. I was surgical. I met with a divorce lawyer 3 days later. Her name was Margaret, and she had the kind of calm that made people nervous. I laid everything out: how I paid for everything, how he lied, how he planned to leave me. She nodded slowly and said, "We'll bury him in paper." That's when I found out Michigan was an equitable distribution state. Didn't matter whose name was on what. If I could prove what I'd invested and show intent, like those texts and the agreement we had, I could recover a lot. But I wasn't satisfied with just divorce. Not anymore. I wanted him to feel what I felt: helpless, gutted, exposed. I started poking around quietly. One night when he was asleep, I went through his emails again. That's when I found 2 huge things. First, Jason had been doing some paid freelance consulting work. Nothing huge, but a few grand here and there from private clinics. That money was undeclared. He never told the university about it, which violated the funding agreement tied to his research position. Second, he had used real patient case notes in a draft for one of his dissertations without proper approval from the ethics board. The notes were anonymized, but they weren't supposed to be used at all. He skipped the institutional review board process. That could wreck everything. I didn't act right away. I waited until the right moment. Graduation week came. Jason was acting like a king, walking around in his cap and gown, setting up photo shoots with his friends, making brunch plans with his family. He kept telling everyone he had offers on the table. He still didn't know I had already filed for divorce. I had waited to serve him until the morning of graduation. I hired a process server and timed it perfectly. We were standing outside the auditorium with his mom and dad when a man in a navy blazer walked up and asked, "Jason Kinlawn?" Jason said yes without thinking. "You've been served." He handed over the envelope and walked away. Jason stood there with it in his hand, frozen. His mom asked, "What's going on?" And I just smiled and said, "Congratulations, doctor." I walked away and didn't look back. But that wasn't even the biggest hit. 2 weeks later, the university got an anonymous tip, me, about Jason's ethics violations. I included links, copies, drafts. I even quoted his own email where he said, "We can skip IRB approval, it's just a formality." That triggered an internal investigation. He was told his graduation was being held pending review of academic conduct. Then the job offers started to fall apart. One by one. His dream job in Denver pulled their offer. San Diego sent a polite rejection, citing recent developments. Austin ghosted him. I watched it all unravel from the apartment he no longer lived in. He had moved into a cheap Airbnb to get some space after being served. That space turned into a permanent relocation back to Reno, Nevada, with his parents. His parents reached out to me later. His mother actually asked me to have mercy on him, said he was just stressed out and made mistakes. I told her I was stressed out too, for 5 straight years while I paid his bills. She didn't reply. My lawyer moved forward with the financial suit. We had everything documented. Jason's name was on nothing, but we showed that we lived as a married couple, pooled resources, and made decisions together. We filed for reimbursement plus damages. That part is still ongoing. But Jason's drowning in legal fees. I saw on Facebook, through a mutual friend, that he started a GoFundMe. It had the nerve to say, facing a legal battle from a vindictive ex. Vindictive? Maybe. But I call it fair. It wasn't enough for him to lose the job offers. Not after what he called me. The funding phase. Like I was a stage of his life he could just outgrow. So I kept digging. I remembered something he told me years ago, late one night after too much whiskey. He said he'd fudged a few things on his application to the PhD program. I didn't think much of it back then, maybe a stretched internship date, a class he didn't actually finish, something minor. But now I was curious. I had access to his files. I found his original application on his old hard drive that he never password protected. He assumed I wasn't interested in that stuff. In his application, he claimed he'd done a one-year volunteer program with a trauma clinic in Portland. Said he'd worked directly with patients, provided grief support, even helped draft new intake protocols. Problem was, I knew for a fact he never lived in Portland. He had visited a friend there one weekend. That was it. I emailed the clinic, pretending to be a recruiter doing a background check. They wrote back quickly. We have no record of a Jason Kinlawn ever volunteering or working with us in any capacity. I sent that info straight to the university ethics office. Not anonymously this time. Meanwhile, the lawsuit kept moving. My attorney discovered Jason had opened a secret savings account during our second year in Ann Arbor. He'd been putting in tiny amounts from his side gigs. Not a lot, but enough that he'd built a $14,000 cushion, money I never knew existed. He never contributed a dime to our shared expenses, yet he saved in the background while I worked overtime and ate frozen dinners. We froze that account with a court order. Jason, now living in Reno, had started working at a small clinic as a part-time assistant. It wasn't much, and definitely not what he expected after 5 years of chasing a PhD. I heard from a mutual friend he was telling people he was taking a mental health break. What he was really doing was trying to stay ahead of the avalanche. Then came the biggest twist. A former grad school colleague of his reached out to me. I didn't know her well, but she'd always been polite when we crossed paths. Her name was Tasha. She sent me a message that said, "Hey, I know this is awkward, but I think you should know. Jason was seeing someone in the program. Started about a year ago. It wasn't just a fling. They were talking about moving to Denver together. She didn't know about you." Her name was Erica. She was in his research group. And yeah, she had no idea Jason was married. He had told her he was single, that he lived with a roommate for financial reasons. She had been the one pushing for Denver, thinking they were going to start a life together. I reached out to Erica. I didn't attack her. I just told her the truth. I sent her photos from our wedding. Lease agreements with both our names. Copies of the texts he sent me during the same time he was supposedly falling for her. She was quiet at first. Then she thanked me. Said she had no clue and felt sick. A week later, she reported him to the university for personal misconduct and unethical behavior within their research group. Apparently, he had pushed her into helping with some questionable data analysis that didn't meet academic standards. She came clean. That added a whole new layer to the investigation. Jason's entire dissertation was now under a cloud of suspicion. The university halted all communications about his graduation status. They put him on a list for potential degree revocation. Meanwhile, he sent me another email. This one wasn't nice. He called me a liar, a manipulator, and accused me of trying to ruin his life out of spite. He said I'd never find someone else because I was cold and too calculated. I didn't reply. I forwarded it to my attorney. He added it to our court packet. Every step I took, I made sure it was legal, clean, and documented. Jason had no idea what it felt like to be slowly erased. To watch everything you built collapse because of your own selfish choices. I wanted him to sit in that silence, surrounded by the consequences he never imagined would touch him. And they were just getting started. It took nearly a year for everything to come full circle. Jason tried to fight the lawsuit. Claimed he had no money, said I had forced him into financial dependence, that he had no idea how much I contributed. He even tried to say I was exaggerating the numbers, that it wasn't that bad. My lawyer handed over everything. Bank records. Receipts. Emails. Texts. Witness statements. Even a spreadsheet I'd kept, with itemized costs down to the gas I paid for during his school interviews. The judge wasn't amused. Especially when Jason showed up to the preliminary hearing in a new button-down shirt that still had the plastic collar pin in it. But that was just one piece. The university investigation finally wrapped up around the same time. And when they made their decision, they didn't just stop him from graduating. They revoked his candidacy entirely. They said his ethics violations, unauthorized use of sensitive data, falsified work history, and personal misconduct violated the core academic integrity standards. He wouldn't be receiving his degree. Not now. Not ever. 5 years of work. Gone. Jason appealed. He wrote letters. He claimed I had set him up. It didn't matter. The records stood. The receipts spoke louder than he ever could. Erica, the woman he cheated with, gave a written statement too. She admitted to being manipulated. She said Jason had pressured her emotionally, used her data, then dumped her when the heat got turned up. She transferred out of the program and started over somewhere else. Jason sent me one last message after that. This time, there was no anger. No insults. Just this: you win. You ruined everything. I hope it was worth it. I never responded. But I'll tell you what happened next. He had to move back in with his parents in Reno permanently. He couldn't find work, not in his field, not even close. Word got around. Academia is smaller than people think. His name was poison. He tried to apply for non-clinical jobs, data entry, behavioral tech roles, even substitute teaching. But with no PhD, no degree, and a public ethics flag? No one wanted him. The clinic he worked at part-time? They let him go quietly. Said they were going in a different direction. He started driving for Uber. Meanwhile, my financial suit moved into judgment phase. The court ordered him to start paying me back in installments, starting with what was in that secret account. Plus a percentage of any future income above a certain amount. If he ever climbs out of the hole, I'll be the first one to know. Every paycheck he earns will remind him of me. And that's not even the best part. His parents called me. Again. I let it go to voicemail. His mom was crying. Said he was depressed, lost, and didn't recognize himself anymore. Said he sometimes just sits in the dark, staring at nothing. I listened to that voicemail 3 times. I didn't feel guilty. Because here's what nobody told me when I was young: some people will treat your love like a bridge, then burn it behind them without a second thought. And if you don't protect yourself, you'll be the one left standing in smoke, wondering what you did wrong. I didn't burn the bridge. I built a mirror. I made him walk back across and see every step he took, every lie, every betrayal. Me? I moved to Seattle, took the job I had once turned down for him, and finally bought my own place. It's small but it's mine. No one's living off me now. I sip my morning coffee by the bay window and watch the sun rise without dread in my chest. I dated a little. Nothing serious yet. But I'm not in a rush. I kept my last name. I didn't want his on anything of mine anymore. I never posted about what happened. I didn't scream on Facebook. I didn't call our mutual friends. But word got around anyway. And sometimes, one of his old classmates will send me a quiet message: "You did what most of us only dream of." No. What I did was survive. Then I made sure the man who tried to use me as a stepping stone learned what it feels like to fall flat on his face. with no one left to blame but himself. Let that be his legacy. Mine is just getting started.